What was it like being raised 100 years ago? What parenting skills were used? How strict or lenient were they? Do we even have any similarities? Let's wind our clocks back to the 1920s and ask time itself, what was parenting like then? Through this exploration, we hope to understand how parenting, this ever-evolving foundational structure, can be a reflection of the social, cultural, and technological changes that shape our world as we know it. It's important to establish that we're looking at parenting from a more general approach. It is understood that there are several types of parenting, and this is merely scratching the surface of a much broader topic. From a more traditional perspective, familial values have remained the same for the most part, particularly the importance of discipline, love, and togetherness, with marriage still being considered one of the pillars for building a cohesive, structured family, similar to the 20s. But this thinking has marginally decreased over time. The nuclear family, marriage, and children still hold a significant value in the United States, but today people view them differently, and they are held to a different standard than 100 years ago. This is neither good nor bad. It's just the evolution of time and culture. But this new thinking could be detrimental if taken too far. The thinking of the 1920s positioned the family as one of the sole foundations of society, government, and culture. And within the family, you had a father and mother. Their roles were for the most part rigid and clear. Women were taught and be expected to be the caretakers of the children, as well as the house, such as by cooking and cleaning, whereas the father was the sole provider or breadwinner of the family. His job was to provide the house, income, and resources so the mother could properly raise the kids in the best environment. That is not to say the father was not involved in the kids' upbringing, but the father's parenting was broader and more generalized. A mother might teach you how to read, whereas a father might teach you how to use what you read to debate and ask deeper questions. At this time, many did not challenge these ideas, as they worked, and few thought differently, as the roles seemed for the most part defined. As far as parenting styles, the 1920s are more closely related to being authoritative, providing a nurturing, responsive, and supporting system to their child, while still establishing firm limits and a clear set of rules and expectations that their household was expected to follow. Most children at a young age were looked at by their parents as adults, so they were held to high standards. Usually this style tends to be more punitive and tends to raise a more mature and cooperative child. Although this parenting structure might be on the more traditional spectrum, it is still adopted by a percentage of families today. Taking this into consideration, this style of parenting might lead to their kids having trouble accepting failures or mistakes, and might lead to undue stress and self-imposed pressure due to the high expectations as a child. As opposed to nowadays, the 2020s are more associated with permissive parenting, which might showcase more warmth, support, and are still just as responsive. However, they tend to be reluctant to impose boundaries, rules, or even expectations for their household, letting their children make their own decisions and allowing them to regulate themselves. Considering the free-range aspect of this parenting style, their kid might become rebellious or lack a strong sense of discipline, as it was never quite imposed on them. With this in mind, it's important to consider that neither style is necessarily superior to the other. This will always depend on the parents' execution on said style, and their children's reception to it. It's important to establish that some may encounter success with authoritative parenting, while others may find it with permissive. There are always pros and cons to either, given the circumstances and environment. Surprisingly though, the 2020s have seen the rise of what is now dubbed as helicopter parenting, as parents tend to be more highly involved in and protective of their children's lives, resulting from fears and awareness of the dangers that lurk closely to us. In fact, this has even led to an increase of child safety measures, which include child-proofing homes, monitoring their technology use, and general heightened awareness of dangers and how to keep their child as safe as possible. This phenomenon was much less prevalent during the 1920s, if present at all. On another hand, parents nowadays tend to be much more affectionate with their children than what they were before. Back in the day, any display of affection had an if-you-must quality to it, withholding any sort of warmth, especially in public, in the name of not spoiling their child. 2020 parenting is quite different in this regard, as displays of affection tend to be the norm and not the exception. Nowadays, seeing parents share warm and sincere moments with their kids and loved ones tend to be an almost daily occurrence and would not cause other families to turn their heads. Education has also been subject to change over the course of the century, with the 1920s emphasizing formal education through traditional schooling, while the 2020s, especially after the pandemic where families were forced to adapt to a brand new system, has seen a rise in alternate education structures, from online classes to homeschooling, or an education system that is more tailored to the kids' needs and desires. One key difference in today's parenting and society is the access to technology. Evidently, since personal devices were non-existent, we can't know for certain what the parents' response in the 20s would have been, but we are 99% certain based on their other convictions that they would have disapproved greatly with their children using a device. However, if we were going to compare it in just a way, let's equate receiving technology as gift giving from a parent. Gift giving was not a common practice during the Roaring 20s. They tended to be limited to special occasions, Christmas if celebrated, and birthdays, with select toys and items they thought their children would enjoy. Similarly, this was done for the sake of not spoiling their children. This is not really the case with today's parenting, especially considering how this generation has been raised with technology, going so far as dubbing them the iPad kids. In fact, this phenomenon has become so prevalent that how much screen time a child should have on a day-to-day basis is a constant struggle and a question parents grapple with regularly. Regardless, with or without the use of technology, gift giving is a lot more rampant nowadays, with kids displaying a wild collection of toys and trinkets that have been given to them. Some say this has caused an entitlement in children today compared to the 1920s. Given the philosophy, the less you have, the more grateful you will be. Nevertheless, from observing parenting practices from the 1920s to the 2020s, we've seen many fascinating differences and striking similarities. There's several more parallels and variances in the experience of parenting 100 years ago versus now, from entertainment, teachings of diversity and inclusion, to parental roles in the adjustment to technology. There's no clear handbook on what to do and how to parent. If anything, this is once again an examination of how households are a reflection of their current society, a product of the times we're currently living in, with lots of lessons learned and lessons to be learned. Having expanded on these differences, it's important to acknowledge the enduring principles of parenting that connect these two eras. The unwavering dedication to providing a loving, nurturing environment and instilling values in our children has remained a steadfast commitment across generations.